I've been nominated to show off my top 5 most expensive comics or most important comics in my collection. Stay tuned to see what I've got. Welcome back, comic book fans. This is Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and today I've been nominated from Sinfully Good Comics to show off my 5 top most expensive comics or my 5 most important comics in my collection. Now, what I ended up doing here was going to the PC, and these are the ones I'm going to do today are the ones that are most important to me, or at least some of the ones that are most important to me. There were definitely some others that could have made this list, but I also went with the ones that were readily at hand. I've got some in the storage unit that have been put away a little bit just to safekeep, and I didn't go and dig through the boxes in the storage bin, but I definitely had the ones at the house and ones that were on hand, and these are all great books to have in the PC, and I'll go through the books and I'll explain why each one is important to me. But at the end of this, as I said, it's going to be 5 books. I will also give 2 bonus books as well, just because the first 5 fit into a special category. The second 2 kind of was the same category, but I ended up doing they were a little bit different they're important because of a little bit of a different reason, but we'll get into that. Now, before we begin, let me make my nominations for other people to do their videos on their top 5 books, whether it's the most expensive or their most important books. I'm going to nominate, just like Sinfully Good Comics did, I'm going to nominate StickyGoose and Moneyball Comics. But I'm also going to nominate Jim from Bronzeville Comics and 2 of my local comic book content creators here in the Baltimore, Washington area, Longbox Love Affair and Cool Stuff Collectibles. Honestly, I can't wait to see what they show off, and especially Longbox, because if you've been watching his channel, he has got some major keys that he recently picked up. Big books there. It'd be interesting if that's going to be one of his books from his video from a couple episodes ago. All right, so let's get into the books. All right, so the very first book in this top 5 books that are most important to me is a book that started me off in the comic book collecting hobby. Now, that's not the first comic book I ever had, but it is the very first one that I ever purchased as a collector, that I ordered from a company. I remember it was J&S Comics. I think they were out of New Jersey, but I'm not sure. I found their ad in the middle of one of the comic books from the early 80s. I was in middle school at this point. The only books I'd ever bought were right off the newsstand, and this was the very first comic that I ever bought. In fact, I didn't buy it. In fact, my grandmother bought it for me. And let me show it to you. It is Avengers number 69. It is this copy right here. And the reason I bought this was it had Kang in it. Kang was my favorite villain from Marvel. And first appearance I ever saw him in first issue I ever saw him in was Avengers 129. And it was there that I really enjoyed reading back issues, any issues I could find with Kang in it. And when I sent away for the catalog from this company, it was J&S Comics, it had the villains listed next to the issue numbers. So you could kind of go and see which villains were in those particular issues. And I'm going, okay, there's Kang in this one, Kang in that one. Well, the Kang from issue, was it 24, 25 of Avengers, was way too expensive at the time. And this was not expensive, so I had my grandmother order that for me. I put everything together, and she wrote me a check, and I sent it off, and I got this issue. And this right here is significant, and it's very significant now because it is the first appearance of the Grandmaster. It is the first appearance of the Squadron Sinister with Hyperion, Dr. Spectrum, the Wizard, and what was the other one? Nighthawk. Forgot Nighthawk. And of course, we saw the Grandmaster in Thor, Love and Thunder, and MCU, and we're pretty sure we're probably going to end up seeing some of these Squadron Sinister characters, which later became the Squadron Supreme. And this was by Roy Thomas and Sal Buscema. So this was a great issue to have. Why else is it very important to me? Well, it's because I eventually ended up getting this book signed by Sal Buscema, and I'll pull it out here. I probably should have already had it out of the bag, but I didn't think about that before I started the video. But let me show you, and I'll try to be very careful with this. It's not in a great condition, but let me see if I can do this without damaging the book too much. Can you guys see down there at the bottom on the inside of the splash page there, you see Sal Buscema and Roy Thomas. Now, I ended up getting Sal Buscema back in the early 90s when he made an appearance at a store down in, I want to say northern DC or southern Maryland there, probably around that Silver Spring area. I don't remember the store, but I remember visiting the shop and ended up getting him to sign this particular issue, and I got to talk to him about this comic and the importance to me in the hobby and everything. And that was early 90s, and last year down at Heroes Con down in Charlotte, I was able to get Roy Thomas to eventually sign this too, and I gave him the same story, and he was very gracious and listened to me talk. I was completely a fanboy, and we talked about that, but it was the very first comic that I ever purchased as a collector, and to get it signed by the two main creators, it was always very special to me. So this one it's not an expensive book, it's not in a great grade or anything, because I couldn't afford it. I didn't want to spend all my grandmother's money. I was looking for something, affordable books that I could read, because I wanted to read about these characters, and picking up old back issues is where I started. And they weren't in great condition. They were just in good, very good, sometimes very fine minus. But it was something what I felt like was affordable back in the day. But very important comic to me in my PC. It's what started me on this journey. All right, so the second book on my top 10 most important books in my PC is a book that's not going to be on anybody's list. There's no spec on this. There's no first appearances. It's just a great, solid issue. It is a Captain America 165. And why is this on my list? Well, this was the second issue of Captain America that I ever read as a kid. 163 was the very first one. You might wonder why 163 is not on the list. Well, we'll go on. I'll explain that in a second. But this is a book. Now, this is not the original copy. I still have my reader copy of that one. But I remember the storyline, these early Captain Americas, and these are also by Sal Buscema as well. These were very, very important stories to me at the time. I just gobbled these things up. This came out in August of 1973. I was not even 6 years old at this point, but I was reading these Captain America issues. 163 with the Viper Squad, Peggy Carter appearance in that as well, if I remember. But this one right here was the first of a 3-issue storyline with the Yellow Claw. And of course, I don't think you can't do much with the Yellow Claw these days. It's I don't think it'd be very PC to use this character. But there's the Yellow Claw. You got giant tarantulas. You can't go wrong. Nick Fury's in it. The Falcon's in it. Great Sal Buscema artwork from the early 70s. And I ended up in the early 90s when I got out of college. I was working. I had a little bit of money. I started going to comic shows, because now where I grew up, there wasn't any comic shows. You had to travel at least 2 to 3 hours away to be able to even find one. And at this time, obviously I was just a kid. I was 5 years old. I wasn't going to comic shows. But when I was able to start going, I ended up buying. That's how I started kind of collecting in person, was buying better copies of the books that I was fond of when I was a kid. Now, I ended up getting this copy. It's in probably a little bit higher than mid-grade on this, but let me show you what I ended up doing. Just like that, the Avengers 69, I ended up getting Sal Buscema to sign it. And I might have actually gotten this one signed at the exact same time. Can you see Sal's autograph right down there at the bottom? Well, look up here by my hand, and what do you see? Oops. Be careful. I got to be real careful here. You guys are probably freaking out that I'm damaging this. Right up the top is Steve Englehart, the writer on this book. And this is important to me because, as I said, it's a book from my childhood that I have very fond memories of. But it goes beyond that, because in the early 90s, again, when I was first starting to work, I was looking to collect more and more. I was getting the Comics Buyer's Guide. And if you remember that as a tabloid paper you'd pick up, I started going to the back of the book and looking to see what was available, what kind of ads were out there, and what did they have? What somebody was selling. I wish I could remember who it was, but they had the original artwork for, I want to say, I'm not even sure if I bought them all or they had, it was just the ones that I ended up buying. I ended up buying 6 pages of original artwork from this issue right here for, I want to say, I don't think I spent more than $165 to $200 at the time. And I honestly, guys, I wasn't making hardly any money at all. I was able to pay rent and pay some of my bills, but there wasn't a lot of extra, and I scrimped, and I ended up buying, let me show you, because these things are on my wall. They're usually over here with my Electra posters that I still haven't turned the camera for you guys to see. But right in the middle, here, I've got 4 of the 6 pages over there on the wall, and I'll show you right here, starting with the splash page. And let's see if you can see it. Look at that. This is the original artwork from 1973. And as you can see off to the side right, let's see, right here, there's Sal's signature. And let's see, over on the other side, right over here, you see Steve Englehart signed it. Now, some of you guys may freak out about getting original artwork signed, but the way I look at it, these were the original creators. This was their artwork. Sal's especially. I mean, Steve wrote this. But this right here, man, it is the prize, one of the prize pieces that I have in my PC. And I'm gonna set it right back up here so you can still see part of it. But I have that, and also on the wall, if you ever remember this issue, there is a major battle scene between Captain America and the Yellow Claw at the very end. I don't have the last page, but the 3 pages of the battle that happened before that last page, I own all 3 of those. And I'll start with this one. You see Cap going through the sewer, and that's, of course, no Yellow Claw in there, but you do have a giant tarantula, so hey, you can't go wrong with giant tarantulas. But you got Cap right there, he's in a trap, and again, we've got Sal signed it right there, and then Steve Englehart signed it right there. It's a little harder to see on that one. And then the next page, Cap gets out of the trap, and there's the Yellow Claw, and they start their epic battle. This ends up being about a 2.5 page battle. But what action you got there. And the giant pal. You can't go wrong with giant pals, right? And again, Sal Buscema, Steve Englehart. Let's see if I can go in on that a little bit. Can you guys see that up there? And then the last page that I have on the wall over here from this issue is probably the better of the two, where they actually see them really. You got a big giant foom and a plow. These are awesome pages. Sal Buscema was very good. I enjoyed his early work more than I did on his later work with Spider-Girl and Spectacular Spider-Man, but I did really enjoy this, and it was a great pleasure to not only go to Sal. Where did Sal sign? Yeah, Sal signed it right there, and then Steve Englehart signed down here at the bottom. It was a lot of pleasure to go and meet Sal in person and to get him to sign this. He, of course, hadn't seen these. This would have been early 90s, so he hadn't seen these pages in over 20 years. And as I said, I've got 2 more pages in there. One of them is just a couple of policemen fighting giant spiders, tarantulas, and then you've got the second page in the issue. It's a talking head with Nick Fury, Falcon, and Cap that I don't think I actually got that one signed, just because either one of them signed, just because the limits on getting things signed, I had to cut down, and I didn't get those signed. But this is why this issue is so important to me. It's because I own this artwork over here, and I'm a very proud owner of this, and these are prizes in my collection that it will be a long time before I see those part. The third book on the list today is a favorite of mine. It's one I grew up with. This is the original copy that I had, and it's actually in really good shape. It is Daredevil 181. This is the death of Elektra. It is a pretty decent key, but it's not a big key. And you might wonder, why is this book on this list? Why is this book one that is one of the most important in your collection? Well, this is a project piece. This is one that I started a number of years ago when one of the first times that Klaus Janson showed up at a convention that I was attending. And I was determined I'm going to get this signed with the thought that someday I'll get Frank Miller on there too. Now, that was projecting a lot because I'd never had a chance to see Frank Miller, but I went ahead and started it, and I ended up, as you can see, let me see, I want to move it a little bit closer. It's a little hard to see, but you can see Klaus Janson's up here, but there's some other signatures on here, and you can see right here in the middle. A little hard to see with that gold pen on there. It is Denny O'Neil, who was the editor-in-chief, and I actually ended up getting Jim Shooter, who supervised this Daredevil at the time. That's what he's listed as, supervisor. I'm sure he was editor-in-chief, but supervised it. And then what really made this special for me was about 5 years ago at the Baltimore Comic-Con, Frank Miller was going to be there, but unfortunately I'd already scheduled to be out of town. I was going to be in Phoenix for about a month, and I was going to miss it. So my wonderful wife ended up going to the show, and she ended up getting Frank Miller on here as well. So that is kind of what makes this book special to me, and just a very nice book. Condition's really good. This is one I might actually consider at some point cleaning, pressing, getting it into CBCS. It would be nice to get this one graded. But that's why this book is on the list. All right, so the fourth book is just like the last one. It is a project book, but it is a much bigger key. It is Amazing Spider-Man 252, the first appearance of the black costume. And this was one of my original copies, one that I didn't get graded, but I tried to pick out a really good copy to get signed, and I think I ended up starting with Ron Friends, who did the pencils on this issue. And over time, I've actually added to this, and I need at least one more person on here. But so far, I have gotten Ron Friends, Brett Bretting, who ended up doing the finished artwork, Tom DeFalco, who did part of the script as well as the writing, Klaus Janson, who did the inking on the cover, and Jim Shooter, who was editor-in-chief at the time. Now, the one I need to get on there as well is Roger Stern, and I have seen him over the years, but for whatever reason, I didn't get this signed at that time, so it was a mistake on my part, I'm sure, at that time. But this has turned out to be a really nice project piece as well, with a really big piece, a very big key, and I'm looking forward to getting Roger Stern at some point. Once I get that, I probably will try to get this thing cleaned and pressed, get it into CBCS just to protect it and to make it into a nice presentation piece. But that's why this copy right here, it's a newsstand copy too, and it's actually pretty good. It only has a couple of ticks over here. The rest of the cover is in really good shape. And here, before I move on to the next book, I'll move it forward a little bit, see if you can see some of the signatures. You can see Tom DeFalco up here at the top. There's Jim Shooter right there, and it's really hard to see Klaus Janson right here. He signed it in gold. He took the book and signed it so quick before I even had a chance to utter the words, "Oh, can you sign this in silver?" But it is what it is, and as a PC book, I don't mind that much, but this is one of those books that's such a big key. And to have it signed by just about every one of the creators, the main creators, it's very special. It has a very special place to me, and I love having this in my collection. And the last book in this top 5 books, the most important books in my collection, is actually, it is a collected version of the comic. It is this right here. It is the collected hardcover for The Dark Knight Returns. This is the original first print of this that came out just shortly after the original 4-issue miniseries ended by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. And I had saved... Why is this book special to me? Well, eventually I ended up getting it signed over the last year, finally. And I'll show you right there. You can see right here on the page, you've got Klaus Janson and you've got Frank Miller right there. And it's special to me because, one, I always loved this book. I loved The Dark Knight like everybody else did back in the late 80s. And I had saved this book as soon as I had ordered it. I put it in a bag and board, and I saved it for all these years. not really knowing what I was going to do with it. But a few years ago, when Frank Miller was going to be in Baltimore, and I talked about that with that Daredevil issue, I wanted to get that signed. And both him and Jansen were going to be there. And I wanted to get this book, and I knew where it was. I just had to get it out of storage. I had it with a lot of other hardbound books, collected editions of things, and I knew my wife was going to go, and I was going to get the book for her to get it signed. Couldn't find it. Could not find it to save my life. It was not where I thought it was, and I was beside myself. Now, I did have another hardbound Dark Knight Returns book. Actually, in a way, it's a much better book. It's the complete Frank Miller Batman. It's got all 4 issues to Dark Knight Returns, all 4 issues of Batman Year One, and it has I think, a Christmas story that Frank Miller did with Batman. And I ended up giving that to her, and she ended up getting that signed by both Miller and Jansen, as well as Denny O'Neil, who was there at the time. He's the editor-in-chief on this. And that was great. It was a good substitute for this right here. But luckily, I ended up going to the right box, and I eventually found this. And over the last year, back in 2022, down in Charlotte at HeroesCon, I was able to get Klaus Janson, and Frank Miller was going to be in Baltimore this last year, and I ended up getting him there, and so I was so happy to get this completed. Unfortunately, Denny O'Neil has passed away, so I was not able to add him to this, but this is one of those that, again, another kind of a special project, and I think you've noticed the theme throughout all of these books. These are books that have meaning to me because of getting to meet the creators and the history of the books a little bit in some cases. And this is the case with this hardbound book right here, that I was able to meet both the creators that came from a book that I love so much. I've got the Dark Knight Returns as regular issues, but I don't have them signed necessarily. I do have a third print of #1 signed by Denny O'Neil and Klaus Janson, but I had other things to get. I didn't want to waste Frank Miller on that. It was a reader copy that I got signed, because I only got him signed because I didn't think I was going to end up ever seeing Miller, to be honest with you. So the next time, if I ever get a chance to see Frank Miller again, that book will be on top of the list. But in the meantime, I was able to finally get this book signed and kind of completed for my collection. So I'm real happy with that. It is, again, another special book in my PC. Now, like I said, I ended up having 2 books I was going to add on as bonuses in this episode. Again, we're going over the top 5 books in my PC, and these are the ones that have the most meaning to me, the most important books to me. And I chose, for this video, I chose ones that were signed by creators that I really like and the ones that I've gotten to meet over the years. And some of the books, of course, have had a special place because it was, in that one case of the Avengers, it was my very first comic I had as a collector. But the last 2 I saved for bonus because, again, the same sort of idea, they're signed. But what makes them special in this case is both of these have been graded, and have been graded fantastically. So in that terms, they've actually got a monetary value, whereas all the other ones may not have necessarily a huge monetary value. These 2 do, but they kind of fit the same theme as the other ones. They were project books in a way, and they wanted them for the PC for different reasons, and I ended up getting them. So here's the first one. It's a book I bought last year to replace the one I sold. It's Frank Miller's Wolverine, Chris Claremont of 2. I should say Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. Their #1 issue from the limited series from 1982. Now, as you see, I've got Frank Miller signed on here. Now, this is a book that I had bought in Charlotte at HeroesCon last year with the intention of sending it in to the CGC to try to get that 9.8. I wanted that back for the PC as a project. I'm working on all 4 of the miniseries here, all 4 issues as 9.8s. I've got at least, at this point, with the 9.8 on this, even though it's signed and that'll be a little bit different, I'll have at least, I think, 2 of the 4. I still need to work on issues 2 and 3 to get 9.8s. But this right here, I took it with me to Baltimore when Frank Miller was there last October, got him to sign it, and I had 2 issues of this. One of them came out as a 9.6. The other one got this 9.8. This is a book that's not going anywhere. This is a book that's going to stay in the PC for a long time. And the second book is almost identical to that Wolverine issue. It is a book that has a special place, maybe not quite as special, but it's a book that I love, and I ended up sending it in to a signing at CGC last fall, and I'm talking about SpiderMan #1, and I always enjoyed the silver version. That was my favorite cover. I sent this into CGC for the Todd McFarlane signing, and if I'd gotten a 9.8 on this, it would have been a great book just to have in the PC. It's not super valuable, but as you can see, I didn't get a 9.8 on this book. I got that 9.9, my only one in my collection, and I have no idea what the value on this thing is. I know that a Universal 9.9 went, I think, about somewhere in 2021, I think, if I remember right, for around $1,600. I don't know what a 9.9 signed version will go for, but one thing I do know is I've watched all these channels with Todd McFarlane signings, doing unboxings, and I haven't seen a 9.8, or excuse me, 9.9 on anything else. So this is a book that's going to stay in the PC simply because of the magnitude of getting that 9.9 on a signed book like this from McFarlane. Again, a 9.8 on this, on a silver book like this, is, I want to say, fairly common. You can go out there and find that from anywhere from probably $250 to $400, but haven't been able to find any other 9.9s, and that's what makes this one very special. Okay, so that's it for the top 5 books in my PC that have the most importance to me. This has been a fun exercise. There was definitely other books that I probably could have chosen if I had spent probably a lot more time going through the PC and looking through the books and everything. But these are all really good choices, and including the 2 bonus books as well. It's definitely a fun little exercise. I've enjoyed this, and this has been fun. I want to thank Sinfully Good Comics for giving me the nomination to do this, and I hope that the guys that I nominated will do their videos, and I look forward to seeing their top 5 lists as well, whatever that list may be, whether it's most expensive or have the most importance to them. But I'd love to know what you think about my books by leaving a comment in the comment section below. And thanks for watching today. I appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to watch the show. And if you enjoyed it, definitely give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to do so. And definitely hit that notification bell so you won't miss out on any of these great shows that I put out each and every week on Mondays and Fridays. So thanks for watching. And remember, every comic has a story.